Welcome back, my lords and ladies, to the Cast Beyond the Wall. We are your guide to all things Westerosi, and we're here to bring you a review, analysis, and fan v. fan debate of each episode of HBO's hit show, Game of Thrones. And we are back, like the longest winter Game of Thrones has ever seen. We are back, and we're back with a vengeance, and man, this episode is not messing around with a vengeance. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and a wise man once said, chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder. I'm not quoting myself. I promise I would never do that to you guys. It would never happen.
He's not really climbing that ladder very well at the moment, is he?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're at the top, it's hard to climb any further. I'm joined by my co-host from the very hot, bleak desert land of Arizona. Sir, introduce yourself.
I'm Austin, and guys, I have a confession. I might be on Team Sam now. He's actually, doing stuff and facing consequences of his decisions. He actually belongs in Westeros, finally.
Austin, I saw you taking a drink. Who put what in that drink?
Right.
I don't ask questions when drinks are handed to me. I just drink them.
You know, in the fantasy league, I'm sure you can negotiate with and trade for him. I'm sure he's worth the trade, Austin.
I was going to draft him because I thought, it'll be better to lose with Sam than against him. But I didn't get that chance, unfortunately.
Guys, someone find out what was going on with Austin. He's saying nice things about Sam this season, and it's I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it, but yeah, it's very strange. I'm also joined by my co-host from the Starkish Lands of Kentucky, sir.
I am Daniel Stoll, and guys, I know that I regularly perform miracles on this podcast. And Caleb, I know you sit awake at night hoping that you can perform as well as me, and I know you want to know the secret, so I'm just going to let you know what it is. I read the book, and I followed the instructions. That's all you have to do.
Every human on planet Earth needs to read this book. All right, ladies and gentlemen. In this episode, we'll be talking about Season 7, Episode 3, The Queen's Justice. We'll be giving you our initial review, recapping each scene, and, of course, giving you an update on our Fantasy League teams. Now, if this is your first time listening to the Cast Beyond the Wall, I do want to remind you that you can track all of our posts on our social media channels, including our Twitter, at cast_beyond_GOT, and on our Facebook at facebook.com/castbeyondthewall. And if you really enjoyed us, I want to challenge our listeners to head on over to iTunes, subscribe. I want to challenge you guys to get a rating and screen cap it and send it to me. Gives us a bump. Head on over to iTunes, being the most important platform, but that also goes for Stitcher Radio, Google Play, any of those apps you can rate us on. Do that because giving us that attention helps give us a bump. A wise man once said something about trying to impregnate the bitch, and this is how you do it. I want to impregnate the social media. I want to impregnate your RSS feeds, okay? So with our podcasts, The Cast Beyond the Wall. We are joined by a fourth voice this week. That's right, we are back to the good old rotating fourth chair, and today we're joined by the writer, producer, director of the upcoming film, You People, LaRon Chapman. LaRon, welcome to The Cast Beyond the Wall.
Hey, it's good to be back to another platform.
Yes.
With the great Caleb Masters.
Oh, well, thank you.
And friends.
So LaRon and I have been podcasting on my movie review podcast, Back to the Movies. It's on a little bit of a hiatus right now, but LaRon we've had a lot of good talks. If you're into movies, we did reviews on the two biggest contestants in last year's Oscar running. We had La La Land and Moonlight, and you also stepped on for Guardians of the Galaxy 2 more recently and Get Out.
Right now?
No, don't get out. Please don't get out. I need you for this podcast. I need your insights, LaRon. I need to know: are we crazy, or has this season been nuts? That's what I need to know.
Well, I think if you're watching Game of Thrones, you're crazy. But yes, I mean this has been a crazy season already. Three episodes in. Yes, I agree.
Oh man. Okay. Well, we're up for some more emotional abuse. It sounds like. All right. So before we go ahead and get into our review and then scene-by-scene recap, I want to do some listener feedback. Last week we said we were going to start taking comments, questions, and concerns from our listeners. You guys took us up on the challenge and sent us some good feedback. So a couple pieces of information. We have former guest host Alexandra Bohannon, who's complimenting us on the Baelish scene. The Baelish scene was very short, but there's some layers there that we talked about, and she was very appreciative. She also says that she thinks, I guess Alex called it, she said that Tyrion going to Casterly Rock was a huge mistake and seen as an act of vengeance that was going to cost them. And surprise, I guess that had happened. So,
yeah, I mean that's quite the prediction there. She said that before the show ever aired, and it was definitely pointing more in that direction now than it was before.
All right, and we also had a comment on Facebook from listener Matt Andrews from Missouri. And Matt said, Theon is the source of all saltiness in the world, and that is how I feel. when asking the question, how'd you feel about last week's episode?
I mean, he's a pirate. He's going to be salty. That's the thing, right?
He's baptized in salt water, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do feel like we talked a little bit about this.
Himself yet.
What does dead man ever die? That's Theon Greyjoy.
I do feel like people are hating a little bit on Theon too much. I mean, the guy went through, we talked about this a little bit last week, but the guy went through a crap ton of stuff, and I don't know, I don't hate Theon nearly as much as everyone else seems to hate Theon.
No, I think on this podcast, we're all friends here. We all think Theon, listen, he did some dumb, stupid, evil stuff, but I mean, he's kind of paid his dues back. I don't really know. You don't really repay violence with violence, but he's suffered a pretty fair amount, and we already discussed why we think it was okay for him. I just want to say, lighten up on the guy. He's kind of a broken human anyway, and there's no way to repair that. So I'd say enough's enough on that bit. But Matt, thank you for voicing your concern and your disdain for Theon Greyjoy. It seems like you've really been doing that the entire time you've been listening to this podcast, but we're glad to hear it once again. Austin, now, did you have some listener feedback that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, there was one correction that was given to me by Chris, one of our listeners, and I had predicted that Jon would get roasted by a dragon and survive it. And Jon has been burned before by fire, so it's possible that he may not survive dragon fire, and not all Targaryens are resistant to fire. So, if he were to get burned by dragons, maybe he would survive it, maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he'd just come back to life, get resurrected again. But yeah, he has been burned in the past.
He can be burned, therefore we're not sure that the Targaryen, the idea we posed that he could get lit on fire by a dragon and then not burn and then be a Targaryen would work out.
Basically, Dany's kind of special in that regard.
There's quite a bit more reading you can do on that subject on the good old Game of Thrones wiki is, but we're going to go ahead and move on for that. But thank you so much, Chris, for letting us know that we might have proposed a theory that would not follow the logical consistency of the show. Thanks again for everyone who did chime in. Now, I also posed a question. I opened the floor for questions for today's podcast. So if you did comment, never fear. I saw your questions, and we will list those later in the episode. So stay tuned for that if you posed a comment on our Twitter or Facebook threads. So if you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you want to continue the conversation, I do encourage you, again, to head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Cast Beyond the Wall, or Twitter @Cast_Beyond_GOT to continue that conversation. Send your comments and your feedback. We'd love to hear it. But gentlemen, enough beating around the bush. I think it's time for us to go ahead into our review of this week's episode, The Queen's Justice.
I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms, and I will.
The war's already begun. I've drawn first blood.
Thursday will be ready. They know we're coming.
All right, so let's go ahead and start things off. What did we think of the episode? Was it good? Was it bad? Ron, what is kind of your initial thoughts before we delve into a scene-by-scene breakdown? What did you think of The Queen's Justice?
I think there are many layers to it. I thought, as always, this show is incredibly well paced, and they set up all of the pieces. I mean, there's a lot of cliffhangers. There's always a cliffhanger at the end, but I feel like it was timed really well. I thought, in particular, I know we're going to talk later. Some things, some revelations with Cersei's character, and obviously the meet with Jon and Daenerys. I didn't disappoint. I thought it was great.
Awesome. So kind of lived up to that. We hype. Oh my gosh, Jon and Dany are going to meet up, and yes, it did deliver on that kind of legendary meeting.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, very good. Austin Lucari, what did you think of Season 7, Episode 3, The Queen's Justice?
It was a good episode. Had some kind of moments I thought were a little corny, but I think it's a little bit to be expected at this point with the pace that the show is moving at this point in the Game of Thrones. As far as the theme goes, with the Queen's Justice kind of being the title of the show, we got to see three queens, Sansa, Dany, and Cersei, all kind of in their element, performing as they believe a kingdom should be ruled. And we'll kind of go into the details of that later, but it was really interesting to see the different styles of the different queens that are currently ruling different kingdoms.
Very great point. I hadn't even considered the three queens thing.
Yeah.
It's this is a can of worms, and this is a totally a sausage fest right now, so maybe I set conversation safe for another podcast. But first, there's a lot of women representation. I know that was a criticism of earlier seasons from a lot of people out there, but it really seems like even still, the women are front and center.
Even we have two captured leaders as well, female leaders, in Yara and Ilaria, and they may not be leaders for much longer, but the leadership amongst the kind of major kingdoms is predominantly female at this point.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's a great point. And hey, if you're a lady listener, chime in. Tell us what you think. Is this show still? You think it's still down on women, or do you kind of really see the really strong representation from our female leaders to be pretty empowering and kick ass? Let us know with those social media. But yeah, Daniel, what did you think of this week's episode?
I definitely enjoyed, like you guys already mentioned, the powerful female characters. That's one thing Game of Thrones has always done a great job of, is having the strong female leads. So I definitely enjoyed that. I did feel like maybe in a scene or two, it felt like it was a little safe for me. And we can get into that later. But overall, I definitely enjoyed this episode.
You know, I really liked this episode. I think I'm taking some time for me to come around to it. Game of Thrones is now a fundamentally different show than it was even two seasons ago. Not to say it's bad. It's just different. So the plot has now escalated to breakneck speed. I mean, all around, from characters teleporting all over the map to the plot line. I mean, we had 2 sieges, guys, in one episode within 20 minutes. Like, that's lightning fast. Mm-hmm. I mean, remember we had the entire Battle of Blackwater. That was an entire episode. And we've got 2 Blackwaters, essentially. Yeah. From a plot perspective, we've got 2 Blackwaters in the same episode. That's a pretty big deal. So, and it just seems like a lot of these, we're at the point now where they are starting to clear the board of a lot of these subplots that aren't ultimately going to be super impactful to the conclusion, which in some ways is very fulfilling, and I appreciate it, but it just seems like it happens so fast. So it's not a criticism. I think this is still very compelling TV. I think our characters still get a lot of great moments to shine, but at the same time, I can't help shake the feeling that, man, I just don't feel like this would have happened a couple seasons ago. And Euron Greyjoy is a character specifically. It's kind of starting to bother me how much he's just there to 2 things. He's over the top ridiculous. He's from a different show. He's in a cartoon. And I kind of like it. It's fun. We talked about this on our podcast last week, Laron. I kind of like it because it is super fun. And I love his one-liners are just like, oh my God, he just said that? That's so funny.
Yeah.
And he's really shaking things up. But he feels like he's uncharacteristic of the show to some degree. He's being used as a guy to come in and just like wipe the map. Like he didn't have any ships last season. And this season he's got apparently the biggest fleet in all the seas, and they took out 2 other fleets like it was no big deal. So again, this is just them. They're taking some plot shortcuts that do make things feel like they're going really, really, really fast. And I'm just Game of Thrones used to be so meticulous and intentional with how it set those pieces up that whenever those things happen, you're like, oh yeah, didn't see it coming, but wow, they set this up along the way. Versus now, it just seems like they're like, okay, yeah, when this guy came in and he had this, you know what? He's got this huge fleet, just roll with it, and then that fleet wiped out the other fleets. It's just a different show, and I'm trying really hard to accept that and not say, oh, it's better or worse, because either way, I think it's still really, really compelling TV.
It's very different than it used to be. As far as Euron goes, though, I think he's a character in the same vein as Joffrey and Ramsay, where they're kind Definitely of scene chewing characters, fairly one-dimensional for the most part, with a lot of kind of inflammatory lines. I don't think he doesn't fit in the show, but any more than say Ramsay or Joffrey did, I guess.
I would definitely Joffrey. Yeah, I guess they played him up a little bit. Definitely Ramsay. Ramsay was also very cartoonish. He was just so sadistic, it kind of compensated from the looniness. So, but yeah, overall, guys, I think I completely agree with Laron. Those moments where Dany and Jon met, that lived up to the imagination. I wasn't sure how it was. I honestly wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I felt like they really landed that. It landed the big moments, and we get an amazing closer. So overall, I think this is still really great TV. I don't know what else to say. So let's go ahead and do that scene by scene breakdown, and let's go ahead and start off right off the bat, just like the episode with Jon and Dany. So first and foremost, we actually have Jon pulling up on the shore, and he reunites with Tyrion, and so many callbacks. oh, last time I saw you, you were pissing off the wall. Oh God, that's so fun. And it was fun. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. And I think they also kind of bring up other moments we kind of forgot about. Like, hey, remember that time
When
you were married to my sister? It wasn't consummated. It wasn't legitimate, but it happened. We're fine. Just move on. Let's just address it and move on.
It was a thing. It was a thing.
It was a thing. Yeah.
You didn't find that kind of corny? I felt that whole like sequence of them walking along the wall, just kind of shooting the breeze. Like it was kind of corny to me.
I feel like they hired Aaron Sorkin to come in and write that scene. They're like, we're gonna have this awesome wall to walk on, so just give write Aaron Sorkin lines and do a walk and talk for like 5 minutes.
By the time you get to the end of the line, yes, we will have covered all of these topics. Yes, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
Definitely.
it's pretty convenient, but
And then the dragon showed up, and then Jon Snow, despite seeing like all this other shit, he's like, oh my god, dragons. It was still pretty cool. So kudos to Kit Harington for having that like wow factor. You're like, whoa, it's crazy. LaRon, what did you make of the Tyrion-Jon reunion?
I agree. I do think it was really pretty telegraphed. It didn't bother me too much. I had forgotten about him being married to Sansa. I think it helped us kind of revisit those things, but I would have probably found a more creative way to, integrate that into it. But I mean, I thought it was fine.
Right. Yeah, I think you mentioned a good point too. It's like they knew whenever those two met, they had specific things they could not talk about. So
Right.
they just kind of like wrote it all into one scene. That's a good point. And it's not. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's also.
I think it was more out of convenience and time trimming. Like let's touch on this. Hey, there's this long wall. Let's cover all these topics, then let's get to the main story. Slightly convenient, maybe a little lazy, but not terrible.
And bad. Austin?
I totally agree with you on that point. I found it a little corny, as you said, like convenient and all of those things. That aside, it's kind of nice to see him together again. John and we'll get to this a little bit later too, he just feels really out of place with this group of characters. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
One thing I really did like is at the very beginning, they kind of looked at each other and one of them said a line and they just both kind of smiled, had kind of like a smirk. And that moment was really cool. And then some of the dialogue, like you said, agree with Austin a little bit, was a little corny, but that one moment where they kind of smiled, that kind of did it all for me. And I really liked that moment in particular. But yeah, I think you guys covered it.
It's good. Yeah, they established that, hey, these characters have a rapport, and they actually still kind of liked it. They left on very good terms, so it's kind of nice to see that. Not everyone in Westeros wants to kill each other immediately.
Yeah, there wasn't any disdain in their exchange.
None.
It was more kind of relief. You're one of the mostly good guys that I know.
Yeah. I trust you enough, just enough. I trust you enough that we can all be friends here.
Right.
But watching from the distance, ominously, was Melisandre, and you get that little music cue, the dun, dun, the creepy. Oh, hey, she's watching from a distance, and she's like, "Yes, I have brought ice and fire together, and now we're making ice and fire babies." I don't know what they're doing, but they're making
that's
babies.
the name of the book, guys.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So she was reciting the title of the series.
Yeah, I mean, it just totally hit me like, oh god, ice and fire. Jon Snow and Daenerys with the dragons is nuts.
Didn't see that coming. I know. I just was pretty changed the whole way I watched the show, really. Now, this was kind of a fun scene because it was a weird exchange. Basically, Varys is saying, hey, cool, what are you going to do next? And she's like, oh, I'm out. I'm going to Valyria to do mysterious, ominous things.
Right.
And then she says, no, I'm gonna die here, and so will you. And the look on his face when she says that, he just gets like uncomfortable. He's like, oh shit.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't really have much to say about this exchange other than that I really enjoyed the character dynamics.
Is there something like special about dying in Westeros? Like, is she dying there because she's foreseen it, or is she dying in Westeros because she needs to die there?
That's the way I read it. It felt like she had foreseen something, and I was going to say we hadn't had a moment in a while where Melisandre knows things, and so that it kind of called back to that a little bit for me. So I don't know, that like Caleb mentioned, there wasn't a lot here. It was interesting seeing their characters interact, but there wasn't much to it.
Yeah, I'm very curious in this idea that she has to die in Westeros. So I mean, we not much to say about it at this point, but it's something to keep in mind as we probably go into next season, I'm guessing.
I just can't wait for someone to gift the hell out of his look on his face when she says, "And you're going to die here too." I was like, "What?" It was just like that, really awkward. I was like, "Oh, gift of the week, probably." LaRon, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, like you said, I wonder what that's foreshadowing. Like, is she wanting to be there? Is she wanting to be there? Because for him, by saying to him, and his, like you said, his reaction was very, obviously puzzled. It seemed more like it's a negative. It takes a negative connotation for him, but for her, it didn't seem like so much. But I don't know.
Right. And anyway, she also didn't say how he's going to die, so he could die like old age or something like that. He just knows he's going to die in Westeros. I should remind you guys, if we're going to buy into the Melisandre prediction, she's still going to have if we remember season 3 when she ran into Arya, she's also going to have a reunion with her at some point. So we'll see if they tie that. And see how accurate those predictions turn out. But enough's enough. Let's get around to the meeting. Okay, so Jon shows up, and Daenerys, like a really rich, well-off woman, has someone recite all the titles and why she's awesome to Jon, and Davos is just like, "He's King of the North."
Right.
He is the worst hype man in the history of hype men.
What are you talking about? He was the guy who...
This is Jon. He's King of the North. That's it. That was terrible.
Man,
it was disgrace to hype men.
Did it sound like whenever they were reciting all those titles for her that it was her voice disembodied for a moment? Because because she was off camera when she was saying it, so I was like, that doesn't make sense. There wouldn't be an intercom during this point, but then you cut to her and you realize that she's...
I think it's Miss Sandy.
Principal Danny hitting the intercom button.
Yeah, right. There was a moment.
Breaker of chains.
There was a moment at the very beginning.
Sound guys, sorry.
Right.
There was definitely a moment at the very beginning where I was like, wait, is that her talk? No. So I definitely had that moment too.
Like, I thought she was I was like, but I didn't know she could do that though. I was like, so.
Danny have other magical dragon powers? She can read minds. Jon Snow, paging Jon Snow. This is the Breaker of Chains. Report to the throne room.
Right.
Yeah. So it's okay. Firstly, Austin, I'm not going to argue with this, but I would remind you, in season 4, he got me on Stannis' side for a whole 3 episodes. That's pretty impressive. Okay. Remember when
he redeems himself a little bit later, but his initial introduction was garbage. It was such trash.
He's fitting with the Northerners. He's a king of the North over here. So, okay, all right. So basically, it's a nice contrast there. You have obviously this titles mean a lot, and even in Westeros they don't, but not to the Northerners. The Northerners don't really care about titles, and of course, the first thing she cut to the. If I could. One phrase to sum this whole episode up. Sorry. Small point. Cut to the chase. Because Dany doesn't mess around. She just says, okay, so you're going to bend the knee, right? And we can talk later? And he's like, no. Nah, man. I'm not going to bend the knee.
You've traveled all this way to break faith with House Targaryen?
Break faith? Your father burned my grandfather alive. He burned my uncle alive. He would have burned the Seven Kingdoms.
My father was an evil man. On behalf of House Targaryen, I ask your forgiveness for the crimes he committed against your family. And I ask you not to judge a daughter by the sins of her father. Our 2 houses were allies for centuries. And those were the best centuries the Seven Kingdoms have ever known. Centuries of peace and prosperity, with a Targaryen sitting on the Iron Throne, and a Stark serving as Warden of the North. I am the last Targaryen, Jon Snow. Honor the pledge your ancestor made to mine. Bend the knee, and I will name you Warden of the North. Together, we will save this country from those who would destroy it.
You're right. You're not guilty of your father's crimes. And I'm not beholden to my ancestors' vows.
Then why are you here?
Because I need your help, and you need mine.
Once he didn't bend the knee, I thought the exchange was really great because what you saw is them bringing up lots of really great point, counterpoint on why just really articulating their points of view. Well, why would Dany help Jon, and why would Jon want to help her? I love how she brought up, well, thousands of years ago, your family swore an oath to my house. And then Jon said, yeah, but your dad burnt my uncle and my grandfather alive. So I think that kind of invalidates your oath there. So it was really great points on their part. And then Dany reminds later, says, yeah, remember King Robert, the guy who had everyone in my house killed? That your dad helped with that guy too. It's just really, really great way to call back history, bring up a lot of these old threads, and remind viewers of all the importance and the impact of history on the story that we have today, both within the context of the show and predating the show. So I really dug it quite a bit.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly as you said. It was a cut to the chase scene. It was checking all the boxes of all the past storylines and all the history between House Stark and House Targaryen and everything that's happened. And it was point, counterpoint, back and forth. And while Dany still very much wants him to bend the knee, I think she understands why he refuses to.
There's definitely by the end of the episode especially, but even in the context of the scene, there's a mutual understanding here of where the positions are at. And they both understand that they're not really bad people, but they still don't quite trust each other enough. And I don't know, it was really cool. Again, I think you bring up a good point though. It's like they sat down and said, okay, if these two were going to be in a room, what things would they have to talk about?
Exactly.
All right, we'll hash it out now.
Kind of unlike, as we were kind of critiquing Jon and Tyrion's reunion, where they were kind of hitting points just on the nose. This felt more organic.
I agree.
So the cutting to the chase was effective here in this scene, I thought. But
I definitely enjoyed the scene. I definitely felt like there was a lot of tension. And like you guys said, they hit all the points they needed to hit. And it was a great scene, don't get me wrong. But I did feel like this was the scene that I felt like they were a little safe. I didn't feel like they pushed the level enough. Maybe that's just my own expectations coming into the scene. But I did feel like they didn't take any risky decisions in this scene. It was just a safe scene. I feel like they could have pushed, I don't know, maybe there could have been some more consequences on some levels of, I don't know. Maybe that's just me and my own expectations. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. What do you guys think?
Well, what did you? I mean, seriously, so what kind of did you envision? I guess.
Well, this is what I envisioned. I guess so. Maybe because it just met my expectations, it didn't exceed them. I guess I maybe more. I don't know. I just felt like there could have been she keeps him there, but in the end, they just end up agreeing. I felt like there could have been. I felt like if they didn't go far enough, maybe with the tension on some point.
You wanted them to want to kill each other.
Kind of more of a struggle.
Yeah.
I feel like, though, what I noticed, I mean, just little nuances between both of them as they were making exchanges, it seems like they both were made to feel very vulnerable in front of the other person's presence. It's like they know they're powerful in their own respects, but now that they're face-to-face with, because they only know stories of each other.
Right.
And now that they're face-to-face with that person, it seems like they, even on her end, even though she's asserting herself somewhat, she still seemed to be kind of off her guard, or not as guarded as normally,
Yeah, no, I'd agree. She was definitely still carried herself as very strong-willed and not messing around, but at the same time, she was a pretty straight shooter with him pretty regularly.
It's like they met their equals.
Right. Well, yeah, honestly, my big takeaway from the scene, too, is walking around. These people were made for each other because they're both very stubborn. And ultimately, I think what Tyrion brings up in a scene we're going to talk about in a second, though, is that they really have the same goals. They can't meet in the middle because it's kind of like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, guys, with Sansa and Jon not being able to get on the same page about what the priorities were. It's because no one has seen the army of the dead but Jon, so it's a really hard sell for him to say, guys, this is super important. And for him, he doesn't really care about the squabbles in the South. He's like, I mean, yeah, let's get rid of Cersei by all means, but really it's not that big a deal. And so it's hard for Daenerys, who's her whole life has been waiting for this moment to take the Iron Throne, for this guy from the North to come down and say, yeah, it's not that big a deal. You should really help me instead. So
Right.
But you raise a great point, though, because obviously Cersei is a threat to their houses, so the really equals is a great way to put it, LeBron.
Yeah, the whole scene had me cracking up because it was like you had all of Dany's people and they're all excited about what they're getting ready to accomplish. And Jon's this sad buzzkill kind of character. He's the emo kid at a frat party, right? He's just sitting there in the corner, sad. And he's like, what's the point of any of this? We're all going to die anyway. So the contrast between him emotionally with Dany was like a very, very stark contrast, which again is kind of a funny pun.
Oh,
I thought you did it on purpose.
got puns. Are you sure that wasn't intended, Austin? Are you sure?
We're gonna go ahead and say it.
It wasn't, and then, but even beyond the emotional kind of tension and kind of their viewpoints coming through, the fashion that you see between Dany's team and Jon, like you just see this huge difference between the type of people they are and the point of views that they're coming from.
We find out, so they have this big heated exchange that doesn't really conclude when Varys shows up and whispers in Dany's ear when they've learned the news about last week's conclusion, where apparently not only did Euron go in, kill a bunch of people, and kidnap two of the MVPs, Alaria Sand, one of the Sand Snakes, and Yara, he actually destroyed their whole fleet except for one ship. Mm-hmm. The whole fleet. I was very disappointed that we didn't get Gendry rowing up in the boat. We had it figured out, guys. We knew Gendry was going to show up and pick up.
I thought when I saw that rowboat at the beginning of the episode, Jon Snow hopped off it. I'm like, it's Gendry, guys. He's here. He's arrived. He's ready for action. It's going to be great.
So, yeah, no, I was disappointed. But we do find out that Theon is alive. And once again, he has lost favor with the Ironborn again. Do we have anything to add about Theon? I mean, I don't really know as much to say. Just he came back and they still don't respect him because Ironborn.
It seems like he just has like a role to play still. Like, why does he survive? Why do they save him if he doesn't have something important to do in the future? If that doesn't end up being the case, I'll be severely disappointed.
Right.
But at this point, yeah, not a lot to say about what he's going to do. I don't really have any predictions. Stahl, do you have any idea?
I don't really know what he's going to do, but I completely agree with you. If they're just dragging him along and he doesn't end up doing anything, I'd be really disappointed with the show. He has to have something influential to do because, I mean, he's, everything that happened with Ramsay, and then now the Greyjoys don't respect him, and they just continue to spit at him, and so yeah, I'm with you. If he doesn't have something important to do, I'd be really disappointed in the show.
Because at this point, he would be expendable. So there has to be something.
Yeah.
There has to be something.
Something, yeah. He feels like he should have died along. I mean, at this point, why follow this character all this way if they were just going to kill him for nothing, right? Because he did save Sansa from Ramsay, and he did back Yara. Well, actually, I didn't really amount to much because she still lost the Ironborn, but he did back her there, so that's significant. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, let's go ahead and look at kind of hit on the Jon and Tyrion scene. I mean, Austin, basically just pointing out what you talked about earlier. This is the emo kid at the frat party. Man, you look so miserable up here. But I got here. You look a lot better brooding than I do. I don't know. Basically, this is just I think what this scene, for me, more than anything, demonstrates is that Tyrion knows how to be a great ambassador and diplomat. Because we see him talk to both him and Dany, and work both of them without being dishonest to either of them. He just is kind of trying to work in that middle area and find the common ground. So he's like, well, I can't give your army, but what can I do? So he can take it back to Dany.
Except for his great man once said line, I would never say that to you. No, I would never make things up.
I just want to point out that later in the episode, he says, a great man once said, and cites Bronn and says, let's impregnate the bitch. Like, yeah. So anytime Tyrion says, a great man said, could be anybody. Could be himself.
Right. It kind of seemed like he was kind of just reaffirming that there was an alliance between the two of them.
Right.
Because he's talked this guy up now to this point. He's like, I do trust this person.
Right.
So probably for his own reassurance, making an exchange to see that they were on the same page.
Right. Doing his very best to make sure, because he sees the benefit of the alliance, but neither of them do, and he kind of understands where they're both coming from. Again, Tyrion doing his thing. I don't know. Do you guys have anything you'd like to add about the scene?
I mean, I thought it was strange that Jon trusts Tyrion as much as he does, but that kind of calls back to the earlier scene as well. I mean, they really only met for a brief period of time. They were at the wall. They really didn't have like a significant connection with each other, but he still kind of trusts him. Maybe it's out of necessity. Jon's basically trapped on the island. He has to trust somebody. It might as well be Tyrion. But other than that, it's good to see Tyrion kind of being a really good mediator, which is what his strength is.
to piggyback off of what Caleb was saying earlier, Tyrion just really knows how to bring out the best in people, and he gets something from Jon and something to Dany, and he brings them together as we see later in the episode. So yeah, just showing that ability of Tyrion is what this scene is really showing for me.
We'll kind of quickly get through the last scene. Basically, this is Dany and Jon forming some form of an alliance. It's not, oh, I'm going to give you my army, but it is, hey, you want some dragon glass? We can give you all you need to make your weapons to stop the White Walkers. So let's get to it. I found the whole scene to the second Dany Jon scene, I found to be, again, it was just so kind of on like straightforward, and the fact that he was able to just approach her so easily. I don't know. The whole thing just is like bam, cut to the chase, but it does. I think it succeeds at getting the point across, which is she doesn't necessarily buy his thing about the White Walkers, but she understands the benefit of his alliance, and she understands the benefit of his alliance. And understands that she needs to give him something so that he can help her later down the road. Now, I do want to pose a question I got from one of our listeners. Jeff Eaton from Oklahoma posed the question, will Dany be more open to helping Jon in the north now that her two biggest allies in Westeros are gone? Now, of course, he's referencing the fact that later in the episode, Grey Worm loses all of his fleet as well, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So what do you guys think? Do you think now Dany is going to be forced to make an alliance with Jon now that she's lost so much of her own armies?
Yeah, I would definitely think that's the direction that it would be headed. They've agreed to work together on some level, and now that things are progressively getting worse for Dany, she needs to think of other options, and I definitely think that this is where she'll turn towards increasing alliance. Like, this will be her chance to put some faith into Jon, not completely trust him, but say, okay, what can you do for me? And if he follows up on that, then that will lead them in the path of being trusting in one another. So yeah, definitely think that's where it's headed.
I think Dany will be more likely to help Jon if she sees some sort of evidence. She's the type of character, and we've seen this in Meereen, she cares about ruling, but she has issues that are more important to her, and specifically being the well-being of her people. When we look at how she kind of destroyed slavery over in Essos, I think she would view the defense of her people from the White Walkers in a very similar fashion. If she were to see some evidence that this was actually the case. Right now, she doesn't really believe Jon. I think that's pretty clear. But she's willing to entertain his ideas and his needs in order to gain an alliance with him. I think very soon it's possible that she would abandon her war with Cersei. It's not going well, in order to go help Jon if she were to see some sort of evidence that the White Walkers actually do exist.
With both of them, though, I feel like Dany's not giving a lot. There's not a lot of resistance, on her part, and I think it is because there's a certain reluctance, but not resistance. Like she's willing to listen to him. She's willing to embrace this idea, and I don't know if it's because they just desperately want this to be the outlet for it, but it's going to be very interesting, kind of to see, how she come to understanding, come to accepting the truth of this, and how that's going to be revealed ultimately.
Wouldn't it be crazy if she does, and because she is going to need his help, no doubt about it, and I think she is going to be even more opening, but how open? So what if Jon says, hey, I need you in the north, and instead of, they've made it to Dragonstone, which is actually, it's crazy close to King's Landing, it's like right across the bay, but if all of a sudden they moved all of their forces north so they could meet with Jon's army or something to that effect, because he's not going to want to leave the north defenseless, it'll be interesting to see what steps she takes in order to forge this alliance, because now she went from kind of passively needing to like, yeah, of course we need more support, to, oh man, if I don't have you, this isn't going to work.
Right. But she doesn't want to, take any of her power down. She still wants to be
the queen.
The queen.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Like, I need you, but
if you're not going to bend the knee, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
Apparently she didn't do her research about kings in the north and bending knees and such.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our next location, King's Landing, where we found that Yara and the Martells are being drugged through the streets, and Euron is doing the Euron thing where he is just chewing the scenery hard, and he's like, look, I got some women strapped up to this horse. Look how awful it is. I don't know, just being overzealous cartoon man. They parade them all the way through the city, all the way right into the throne room, where he gives them as a gift to Cersei Lannister. So, I mean, he continues taunting Jaimie. Hey, look, I brought you what he couldn't bring, or what you couldn't bring. It was just, there's a fingering joke in there. I mean, this guy was...
Yeah, I was there.
He was unleashed. What did you make of this? Do you think that Cersei's actually going to really stick with this alliance with Euron at all?
I don't think you can trust... I trust her as far as I can throw her, so I would say no, but...
No, I don't either, and I think it could be and actually end up being her undoing. No, we watched this scene a little bit, and we were texting back and forth, Daniel and Caleb and I, and we were talking about Euron being Anthony Scaramucci, kind of just being a bombastic person, just coming in out of nowhere, just like throwing insults all over the place. Yeah, the finger up the butt thing, I could totally see this guy saying that. And then all of a sudden we were going to make this great joke on the podcast, and this guy is all of a sudden no longer in his role anymore. Which, guys, I don't think that bodes well for Euron. I mean, maybe he's gone in 10 days too.
Well, we are living in reality TV reality now, so maybe Trump got a hold of those leaked episode 4 scripts, and he's trying to recreate Game of Thrones in the real world.
That makes a lot of sense.
He's trying to keep his throne, and he sees this as the blueprint.
We had a guy called the Mooch in the White House, and then he got kicked out. I think Euron... I mean, can we just start calling Euron the Mooch anyway, just because?
The Mooch.
I'm going to call him that, whether you guys like it or not. So
I think it's pretty bonkers he's pretty bonkers if you ask me. But hey, apparently his fleet is enough to decimate whatever comes in his way on the oceans. So, do you guys think he's a bit too much, Laurent? Do you think has he been too much for you?
I mean, this season, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think he's necessarily out of place. Like, he's definitely a big character. He chews up scenery, as you said. I think there are other characters that have done that in the past, and this is just the newest iteration of that type of character.
That's
but those characters tend to like burn out really quickly because as mentioned before, Joffrey, Ramsay, and Euron could very well be the same way. Like, they're gonna hit you hard with them, and then he's not gonna be around anymore, which will hurt me a little bit inside. But at the same time, I don't know if I want finger in the butt comments every single episode for the next 10 episodes.
I can't decide if it's how he's playing it or if it's how he's written, and that's, I guess like you said, we'll see. But I agree. I think because he takes so much energy out of every scene that there's a chance that he won't last because he's the shiny object right now. So, right. And we're paying way too much attention to him. So I feel like he's going to be.
I think he's getting there. Like you guys said, he definitely takes up all of the scene, which then detracts from other people within the scene, which is frustrating. I was definitely frustrated with this scene, just in the sense that he says all this crap and just gets away with it. Nobody really says anything. Like, he says all these things to Jaimie. Nobody seriously doesn't say anything about it, and that's just frustrating.
He delivers results, Stall. He delivers results.
And then
the results you never could.
Well, and then he says all this stuff to Jaimie, and right in front, like, Cersei says nothing, and then Jaimie sees Cersei say nothing, and then continues to just do whatever she says. Like, that's just very frustrating to watch happen. So I'm frustrating with the dynamic that's happened, and so from that sense, he's getting a little bit too much. Yeah.
I think Jaimie is the most frustrating part of that entire situation.
He is. Jaimie
I
is
would agree with you.
This season. Okay, and he's gonna get a good moment later. But holy crap, guys! Jaimie this season is really starting to wear on me, like in a way that's like, why is he just taking all this?
He's a pacifist this season.
I know,
and he wasn't that way.
No,
I mean, he's a Lannister.
I know he's a Lannister, and he's not used to take. He used to be a smug, and I know he's smarter now, but that doesn't mean he's just a pushover. Right. He doesn't fight. He's the gunslinger. He doesn't fight with his hands anymore. He fights with his heart, or fights with his mind or whatever.
No, all he fights with now is his dick. That's it. That's all he cares about.
Hey, that gets still points in the fantasy league, but
It's true. It did.
So yeah, Jaimie's a very big frustration in the season so far. But let's go ahead and talk about the scene with Cersei and the Sand Snakes down in the dungeon. Great intensity here, because I was just the whole time I was sitting there like, okay, what is she gonna do to them? And she actually went pretty easy on it. I mean, I know it sounds awful, but
sort of. Yeah.
Listen, Frank and Clegane standing over in the corner, and I was like, we saw what happened to the nun.
Well, yeah. I mean, it could be worse.
Yeah,
It
so
could be worse.
I expected something more visually terrible to happen, and yet,
I mean, she did say you're.
And I think that's what she wanted. I think she wanted it to be a slow process of suffering since she had gone through the same.
Wouldn't it be crazy if she didn't actually poison?
Yeah.
And just wants them to think.
Yeah, just fucked with her.
Mind games. Yeah, I don't know, because it was a strange choice. Now I did notice that the whole time I was like, why are her lips so pink? I don't know if you guys saw it on the TV. I was like, it looked off.
Yeah,
it did. And I was like, oh snap, good call.
I mean, you guys said she got off easy, but Ilaria is going to watch her daughter literally rot and decompose in front of her.
I know, it's pretty terrible.
That's pretty awful.
The weird thing about this show is in this scenario, because I mean I'm never team Cersei, but I understand it. Like I understand it. I understand the exchange. I understand that this is atonement for the things that came before it. So they allow you to kind of invest on both ends of this in this particular moment. I do feel bad for both sides, but I understand. Like, yeah, you should have known better. That. But.
I mean, yeah, Ilaria Sand did bring this on herself.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
no, Cersei's justified. Cersei's justified, but she doesn't make her any less of a monster.
True.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next bit where, hey guys, Cersei just had that huge power rush. She feels real great about that act of vengeance, so she wants to go unload some of that. When she goes straight up to Jaimie in the bedroom, and bam, we're going right into it. This is probably the most hardcore sex scene we've seen between the two of them, by the way.
Yeah.
Easily, actually. It was super intense, very charged scene. Yeah, which is honestly not that I want to see them, brother and sister getting it on, but I feel like that has been something that's been mostly absent from the show altogether. Mm-hmm. I guess we did see that weird other scene a couple seasons ago, but we were all distracted by the potential "is this rape?" question mark.
Well, that was the thing. It was literally flipped the script on that scene because Jaimie says no in that scene. He's like, he doesn't want it. It was a complete flip of the script of that scene that caused so much controversy a couple seasons ago.
Oh, I didn't even consider that.
Yeah.
He says no? Huh.
He absolutely says no. When she approaches them and tries to instigate the situation, he says no. Yeah. And eventually he kind of gives in, as Cersei did a couple seasons ago. But it was literally a complete flip of the script of
yeah. There was definitely an audible no at the very beginning, and he kind of pushes, and then she just completely ignores it, and then it just continues. But yeah, it was there.
Huh? I hadn't even considered that.
I mean, that gives it more of an impact. I mean, a little bit more context too.
Yeah, well, maybe in that moment he's only somewhat pissed at her. I don't know. That's the thing. I really expect him to be.
It illustrates how completely dysfunctional their relationship is. They should not be together. They're horrible together. They don't know how to interact as lovers and human beings together. They're a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's a very unhealthy relationship, yet they both feel like it's very necessary. And again, I would argue for her, the show hasn't played this up quite as much, at least in the context of the novels, which again is a very different story. But the way she typically views that relationship is she does it because she needs him for things and knows that'll get to him. For him, he is very dedicated to her. In his mind,
yeah.
At this point in the story, he's kind of ditched the whole Cersei boat. But there's a while there where he's very dedicated. Oh, hey, and Cersei, by the way, doesn't mind spilling the beans that they're together.
Yeah, she threw that all the way out there. Once they opened the door, I realized she doesn't care at this point.
She doesn't care.
At this point, she has nothing left to lose.
Yeah.
So.
No, because she is purely driven by vengeance at this point. She doesn't really. All her children are dead. She doesn't really care about Jaimie's safety. Really, she just says, I'm the queen. I do what I want.
Right.
What's the worst that could happen? Kill me.
Cersei's character has gone to a point now where I feel like it is time for her to die. I mean, she's just gone so far, completely. There's almost nothing humanistic about her anymore. It's just, I don't know. And don't get me wrong, Cersei is one of the best written characters on this show, and if she were to die, the show would be losing something. I don't mean to say that, but her character is just, she's lost everything. And even even as Austin was pointing out, her relationship with Jaimie is just not even a thing anymore. So I don't know what really else her character can do anymore. She's just this powerhouse now.
it's like there's no more stakes for her. She has nothing to inherit. She has everything that she's going to have. The only thing that she can get out of any of this is like not dying, I suppose. So.
Right, and also not only that. I mean, I don't feel like her character's got an arc left. There's nowhere left for her to go. She was so invested. I mean, the only arc is redemption, but she is clearly not interested in that whatsoever.
And she has nothing to gain.
No.
Nothing that would give her satisfaction.
No. Sure. Oh, no, it would get her killed if she was to, like, repent somehow. Well, we'll have to see what Cersei does next. I'm really curious to see. I mean, I don't think it goes anywhere but destruction, but let's see what we can find out. But before we head on to our next storyline, before we catch up on our fantasy league, let's talk about the Iron Bank scene. Now, the Iron Bank is a plot they set up in season 3, season 4, basically, where they established the Lannisters had run out of gold, if you guys remember. The Lannisters are broke, so they've been borrowing all this money to fund the war from the Iron Bank. The Lannisters have been doing, but they were kind of still taking credit for the money. Well, now the Iron Bank has come, and they have come to collect and ensure that whoever they give money to next is going to win the war, essentially. So this is kind of a meeting to get a feel for where they're at. Now, Austin, you were a big fan of the Iron Bank, if I recall.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting aspect to the entire storyline that you had this body that basically funds all political action across the entire world. But we saw little bits and pieces here and there. I didn't think they'd been nearly as involved as they should have been in the storyline until now. So I'm really glad to see them back in the story and as an important piece to see how they fund and decide who ultimately sits on the Iron Throne. Hopefully they continue with this.
Yeah, well, and even Cersei says gold's what wins wars. So even she knows and understands the value and understands why she needs them. I will say, caveat though, let's recall, flashback to season 4, the Iron Bank actually did not back House Lannister Baratheon. They backed Stannis, if you recall. They gave him a bunch of money to go buy all his sellswords that he used to go to take the wall back from the wildlings. So, I mean, I don't think they actually have that much faith with the regime at all. And in fact,
it's like betting on multiple outcomes, right? I mean, they back the Lannisters, but they also back Stannis because they're trying to be on whoever side comes out on top.
But enough with that. I think it's time for us to catch up on the latest results from our fantasy league.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
We are back with another week of Game of Thrones Fantasy League, where we have 8 teams, which include us 3 and some of our friends and regular listeners. Austin, Luke, Carr, are you ready to give us those updates?
That I am. Listeners, I'm here with your weekly fantasy Game of Thrones update. Yeah, so you get points. There's a total of 5 categories. You have violence.
Any man dies with a clean sword, I'll rape his fucking corpse!
Sex and nudity.
The gods made this, and it delights me.
Wits and schemes.
Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
Status and power.
Power is power.
And eating and drinking.
I understand that if any more words come pouring out your cunt mouth, I'm gonna have to eat every fucking chicken in this room.
There's lots of things throughout these categories, like killing a random character, killing a named character, killing a dragon. Different levels of getting naked gets you points. Witty one-liners. As it stands right now, we had a huge move in the charts, as a team has no name, Mr. Daniel Stahl's team, gained 240 points this week to take the lead at the top spot with 335 points overall, led by his champion, Jaimie Lannister, who scored 130 points this week by having sex and sacking a city and killing a bunch of people. Did pretty well. That's a pretty huge leap from, I think, about 6th position last week.
He was almost in last. He had like 25 points, and now he's in first by a lot.
It was quite the jump. It was very good. However, I will point out he was still ahead of you last week, just saying. At the number 3 position overall in the 8-person league is myself We Do Not Sow. I scored only 10 points this week, and have a total of 250 points overall. And way down at number 6 is the Dum Dum Stark Killers. Mr. Caleb Masters' team was 0 points over this week, and only 65 points overall, which I think all came in the first episode, Caleb. I don't even know where your team is anymore.
Remember when my team was in the episode, if you recall, when they were in the episode, I was second. Just want to throw that out there. See, the Hound, when he shows up, man, he's going to rack the points up. When Braun actually does something, he's going to get points. Whenever Tormund shows up and kills people and dies in a blaze of glory, you better believe I'm racking the points up. So listen, my guys might all be dead by the time the season is over, but as long as they kill stuff, get one-liners, have sex, and sack shit, which is what they're all good at, just wait. They're not in every episode, but when they're there, they're effective.
You had 2 characters in the episode this week, and they did jack shit. They did nothing. But in other news, in the Fantasy League, some of our friends and fans that are also in the league with us, we have the Lannister Memorial Fund, who is in second place, following close behind A Team Has No Name with 305 points, doing really, really well with Cersei on her team. And Cersei's Grenades has made it out of negative range, which Sam had dragged her down into with a memorable death from Elena Tyrell. So she's back in positive, I believe in 7th place this week. Nice to be out of the negative range, I'm sure, for her.
Congratulations, you got out of the negative. All it took was one of your lead characters getting killed. But she got out of negative. She got out of that demotion. So good job, Alex from Cersei's Grenades. Fun stuff. All right, yeah, good stuff, Austin. Any other? Oh, hey, Austin, you want a fun update? So it looks like there's been an update since you checked the results, and you're going to be happy about this one. Euron receives an additional 25 points for being promoted, and then Cersei, yes, you get. Oh my God. Euron's getting all the points. It's not fair. Cersei will get drinking points for she's drinking the antidote. She gets 5 points.
Wow.
Man, well, I will take those points gladly. They do not, I don't think, move me at all within the league, but I'm happy to receive them.
All right, Austin, thank you so much for those updates. Make sure to stay tuned next week, ladies and gentlemen, when we give you another update. And, of course, I do remind you that you can actually keep up with all the results on the social media pages. That's on Facebook at facebook.com/Cast Beyond the Wall, or on Twitter at Cast_Beyond_GOT if you want to check the results. I'll be tweeting those out via the social media once we have those updates. And of course, you should also follow us there. We can see all these handy graphics. We had an anonymous listener who's really into this league. So into this league that they made what has been called Tumblr Trash versions of all of our teams, and it's kind of fantastic. Those are all on our social media pages, so I highly encourage you to check those out. Thank you. That will be one of our listeners from YOLO Collage. So thanks, YOLO Collage. We appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned next week when you can see who sacks the next city, who has sex, and who drinks the most wine. I can't wait until the Hounds and Beric Dondarrion come in with a flaming sword and get me all the points.
You don't fight with honor.
No, he did.
All right, guys, I think it's time for our next storyline. We're going to go ahead and briefly check in at the Citadel. So Jorah is cured. Apparently, all he had to do is just peel the scabs off and then inject some sort of serum. That's all it took, guys. Finds out the way you cure a disease is by reading the instructions. I guess this was a big secret in Westeros. If you read the book and you do what it says, you get the results you want.
Now, first rule of assembling anything or doing anything is to throw out the instructions and just do whatever you feel like. Right. That's what I always do with IKEA furniture. I assume this is pretty similar.
Apparently the Maesters did the same thing and they killed a bunch of people, so good on you, Maesters. So, yeah, and we see Jorah basically says he's going to go reunite with Dany, and I think this is a really great tie in with... I feel the same way about him as I do about Theon, kind of we talked about earlier. Clearly he's got some significance because he's still around. He's going to do something, but I'm really not sure what that's going to be, other than the fact that he's going to reunite with Daenerys. Cool, but like, what is his purpose? I think he's going to die in a blaze of glory somehow, but it does seem kind of weird they would cure him just so he could go die. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm just really happy we didn't get a gross editing trick this time with like the poop soup. Or
yes.
That we avoid. I was waiting for it. I was like, it's going to happen. And they do it in threes, but we didn't get it.
Thank God.
That's a side tangent, but go ahead.
No. I was glad to not be grossed out. I'm never going to be able to eat pot pie ever again.
Nope.
No. So what are your thoughts on Jorah, Laurent?
I mean, at this point, he has to do something. I mean, it's the same thing with Theon. I think they're keeping these people around for a reason. It's not immediately apparent though.
I mean, yeah, I've said forever that I think Jorah's a boring character. I hope he does something, because otherwise, why was he ever in this series?
We spent a lot of time with him this even in these past couple episodes.
He's been in. I'm actually surprised he's been in all three of these first three episodes.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I didn't expect to see him until the very end of the season.
And I keep saying to myself, we're wasting valuable time on you. You better do something good, because I care about so many other storylines besides this one.
Thank you for being the one person to agree with me.
No, get out. Guys, listen. Jorah's a great character. That man has killed in the name of Daenerys. He's practically died. He got infected with an STD in the name of Daenerys. Like, this guy has been through a lot. And his undying loyalty, I find endearing and hopelessly romantic in a way I can both relate to and appreciate. So, I want him to do something cool. It's probably going to be something sacrificial, and he's going to end up dead, not happy, but that's just how thus is the life of hopeless romantics. Either way, I'm glad to see him back. I'm glad to see him healed, and I'm really excited to see what he does next. Now, before we move on to the next storyline, just another comment that Slughorn continues to be on the rampage as he gives Samwell an Umbridge-like task of hand copying all those moldy books. And as he copies it, in the back of his hand, it etched in the back of his hand will say, "I will not tell lies. I will not cure AIDS. I will not cure AIDS." It'll carve into the back of his hand as it copies it down into the books. It's awful. Why would they do that? Slughorn, come on.
The man has to face consequences of his decisions. It's finally happening to him, and it's fantastic. You should embrace this.
Let's go ahead and move on to the north. We get to see Sansa doing some great things up here. She's ruling. She's trying to manage the resources, prepare for the long winter. She's got a second-rate maester who doesn't know anything about anything. She's like, I gotta go. Remember that dead maester from 3 dead maesters ago? I gotta go check his notes because he's the only one who knew anything. And then slowly but surely, her council, they all get bogged down in other distractions. They need leather in the armor. They need leather because they all want to be the X-Men.
This is the only time that I will say that it does feel like they were leaning towards that. Like you made that observation, but in that particular scene, yes, like it's missing leather. So that's
they're making the New Mutants. The whole X-Men universe is going to tie in. There's going to be a Days of Future Westeros or something, and it all came in. Or either that, or I'm telling you, they read it, or maybe Sam read it in a book. I don't know. It's a lot of leather. We love the leather.
Look, this scene was really good because it showed Sansa doing all the things that Jon would probably never do, which is going through and properly managing a castle, gathering the grain it needs for everyone to survive, letting everyone know that they're doing their job really shitty, and no one's going to survive this because they suck at their jobs. Sansa's really great at that, and I don't think Jon would ever do any of this.
No, Jon would be off in the tower, looking up at north and being like, "Them White Walkers, they're coming. We've got to prepare." And Sansa's like, "Yeah, but what about? Don't worry about that. We've got to.
He would be saying how much they have to prepare, but not actually preparing."
Right. She's more focused, definitely.
I think this again showcases how competent and forward-thinking Sansa is. She knows how to rule. She knows how to delegate. She knows how to command. Peter Baelish starts trying to drop some tips on her, and she's like, yeah, shut up. You're telling me the obvious things. I give it off, again, showcasing Sansa's strength. I think you're dead on, Austin. Now, we finally got a great Baelish line. You know, we don't get full monologues like we used to, like Chaos is a Ladder or anything like that, but we do get him rambling on about some philosophy.
Command suits you. The Northerners are all facing north, worried about the threat from beyond the wall.
So they should be.
I know Cersei better than anyone here. If you turn your back on her...
You don't know Cersei better than anyone here.
I only meant to say...
That the woman who murdered my mother, father, and brother is dangerous. Thank you for your wise counsel.
One of two things will happen. Either the dead will defeat the living, in which case all our troubles come to an end, or life will win out. And what then? Don't fight in the north or the south. Fight every battle, everywhere, always, in your mind. Everyone is your enemy. Everyone is your friend. Every possible series of events is happening all at once. Live that way, and nothing will surprise you. Everything that happens will be something that you've seen before.
It is crap advice. It is garbage. Yeah, don't fight north and south. Fight everywhere. What kind of advice is that? You have to know everything and do everything all the time. It's terrible advice.
Just run out swinging. Yeah.
You guys misinterpreted this, all of you. Daniel, you know what? Daniel, I'm gonna. What did you think of this, Daniel? What did you think of the line?
I loved it. It was Baelish, and it was the Baelish we hadn't seen in a while, where he was really delivering that the chaos is a louder speech. It reminded me of that, as you mentioned earlier. So I loved it, even though I don't care for Baelish that much. It was awesome to hear him deliver this line.
Listen, guys, this is great advice. This is how the guy's made it so far, because he all he does is he like imagines every possible outcome and then lives in them.
Yeah.
He both
I think we know
simultaneously
what he's imagining, what's going through his mind all day long.
he both simultaneously has planned in his head for every outcome, but also lives in the moment, so that whenever the time comes for him to make a bet, he knows which horse to bet on and what the worst case and best case scenario is. This is a man who's a genius, and if Sansa doesn't take this advice, she's going to die.
He just can't tell when he's being rejected. That's all.
Oh, he'll keep trying. Baelish is going to do something big, and it's going to be great. And in fact, that actually segues into our next question from one of our listeners, Andy Rojas from Oklahoma, who asked the question, when will Littlefinger make his big move? We all know it's coming. And Andy, you're dead on. He's going to make a big move, and it's going to be great, and a lot of people are going to die. Whether he's going to survive or not, I'm not sure. I do think I thought it might be a little earlier in the season, but it seems like they're kind of building up to it. They keep giving Baelish, and all the promotional materials, and in every episode, they give him just enough to remind us this guy is a presence here. Like, he doesn't get a lot to do at all in any of these episodes, but it's just enough to remind us, hey, this guy's here.
You're right.
He's going to have a big role to play at some point in this season, I think, even if it's closer to the end.
I think you're right. I mean, I hadn't, until you said it, I hadn't realized that he is in all of the promotional stuff. He's very much, he's being heavily advertised. So, I guess all these characters that we think that like it's a summation of, like, Theon, all these people are here. People like, why are you here? Why are you still, and they're hamming it on, but I'm not sure. Sure.
Austin, when's it coming? When's Baelish going to drop the bomb?
He's not going to. He's just going to die like a chump.
Get off my podcast. Hey, listen, I'm backing the winning horse, Austin. Do not call my horse a chump. Baelish's awesome monologue is interrupted by the fact that Bran has returned. That's right. We get a Stark reunion, guys. Holy crap.
He has returned and apparently completely lobotomized.
Yeah.
Austin, he's your favorite character, though. I thought Bran was your favorite.
I wanted him to rule the throne, but that's when he still had his brain, apparently. Now he's like some freaking weirdo who just spouts off inappropriate shit all the time.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes for you to turn code is one weird comment. So it's hard.
All it took for me to turn code on Sam was like him doing one good thing. So, yeah.
Man.
I mean, it's nice to see them back together for the sake of that, but yeah. I don't really know what he's going to amount to at this point, but
I think he is an exposition time bomb waiting to go off. Mm-hmm. He is sitting on ridiculous amounts of knowledge, and he even says, "I've got all these images," but he's
like
figured out
how to gypsy of the season.
Right,
he's an enormous plot device. That is what Bran is.
Yes, he is huge, and we're going to learn lots of stuff from him at some point. I was actually disappointed when he was sitting in front of the Weirwood tree. I was like, "Oh, we're going to get something good." No,
a little nugget of something.
No.
This is what you're here for.
He's going to have one really long scene at the end of the season. That was the whole reason we kept him around this year. So he is a weirdo. He does bring up the fact that she got married to Ramsay and that he raped her. He didn't say that. But he implied. He's like, I'm really sorry about what happened to you, but you look so great in that wedding dress. Mm-hmm. That upset some people, by the way. The internet was not very happy that got referenced at all.
Yeah, it just felt really callous and insensitive. Yeah, definitely.
It was, but it was intended to feel that way, right? Like, It was intended to illustrate how detached he is from human life at this point.
Yeah, I had read some of the Twitters. Of course, Twitter is always the angriest place to go on the internet. But a lot of people were upset that writers would even bring up that bit because they were so unhappy with it, and understandably so. It was upsetting for a lot of people. But I think it's actually the scene's less about Sansa. I mean, she's weirded out and creeped out, and it's throwing her off balance. Which by the way, I think also is going to serve a way to make her more vulnerable to Baelish's Baelishing. Making her more vulnerable because Bran's kind of like almost triggering her emotional weaknesses, right. So I think this is going to throw her off a little bit. So I think it has a role to serve there. But ultimately, I think it's really more about Bran just to showcase, as you said, Austin, how detached this guy is from reality. He's living in his own world. He's the three-eyed raven now.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because, like, she's seen Jon, who is a man who's been killed and brought back to life. She's been through some horrible circumstances with her marriage to Ramsay, and she's been basically bought and sold like cattle, essentially, by Peter Baelish. Bran is basically damaged goods at this point. He's not really even human anymore. Arya's probably going to come back very shortly, and she's a very different person than when she left. So this image in Sansa's mind where her family's kind of getting back together and she gets to see Bran again, like, it's not the same, and it's never going to be the same. And I think that's what this scene is intended to illustrate.
I mean, really, Jon was the happiest reunion, and that was still kind of detracted by the fact that he was, resurrected from the dead. But that one was still the happiest one we've had. I don't think there's any other Stark reunion that could be as warm as that one. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to the big set piece here, which is the siege on Casterly Rock. The only thing I've got to say is give me 10 good men and I'll impregnate the bitch. I can't unsee the imagery that I wouldn't have seen before he said that line, which is the gates opening and the soldiers just pouring
all the
in.
Seeds just pouring.
Yeah, I was like, oh, look at all that semen just splitting into the... Oh, God. It was just... Oh, man.
But they even came from boats. They were literal seamen.
They were. Did you see? There was a tweet from not Peter Dinklage, but an unofficial Tyrion Lannister account says you could. It's a snapshot of the cave that they go into, and it just said, "Ho, door." And I was like, "Oh God, oh man, the 12-year-old jokes are coming like wildfire."
I guess we did get our crazy edit then. It wasn't gross this time,
Yeah, actually, it was rapid fire. Well, they did something they've never done before, which is where they described the scene as it was unfolding, which is something. I mean, we've seen that on a lot of films and a lot of shows.
Yeah, I did enjoy.
I enjoyed that editing in this show. I mean, to your point, it's been done many times before, but I liked it in Game of Thrones. It was nice.
Well, it was definitely a way to expedite a set piece because again, we used to have like whole episodes dedicated to set pieces, so it's like
just the scene, yeah,
right. It was really clever. And this is where Daniel's boy one of his boys sacked a city, and it was a little too easy. They were not expecting Casterly Rock to bend so easily, because that's when our boy Euron shows back up with his fleet and he's Jack Sparrowing, and then like apparently again it's one of those we see him out there and apparently he wipes out their entire fleet. No survivors, I guess. So now Greyjoy is just hanging out at Casterly Rock. He's got his hands tied, half of a small militia probably, not all of the Unsullied. So set on him. And while he was taking the city, Jaimie was marching on Highgarden to take out Elena Tyrell. And he was, if you noticed, he was followed by Bronn and Samwell Tarly's dad, Lord Tarly, to take Highgarden. So we did find out that Tarlys are officially backing the Lannisters. And I suspected Bronn was going to end up here because he's a sellsword and he was last seen with Jaimie, so it makes sense that he'd be with them too. So what did you guys make of this tactic?
It was a great tactic. At this point, Castle Rock is completely worthless, as they stated in the show. Has nothing there anymore. Highgarden, we know, has all the food, which is going to be needed for an extended war, as we mentioned last week. And apparently they still have quite a good deal of money. They're still the richest house within Westeros, and the Iron Bank is in need of repayment. It was a genius move by a genius ruler in Cersei. People don't give her enough credit. I was kind of happy to see it. I think it's going to continue to move the plot forward.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they talked about sieging King's Landing, and stopping their resources, but Highgarden is extremely resourceful. They have some of the best crops and lands to make that kind of thing happen. So this would also hurt the secondary part of their plan as well, unless I'm missing something. So yeah, very, very important.
This is one thing that we can say that with Jaimie thus far, where I was proud of something he did, because I feel like at this point, like you said, he's been such a passive at this point. But here, his clever savvy has kind of come into play.
Right.
So I think it shows that he's still very intelligent. It's just that he's not asserting himself the way that he used to in previous seasons. So.
Right. And let's say this, and actually we're giving Cersei credit, and sure, she's the one who pulled the trigger, but it sounds like Jaimie was the one who threw the strategy out there, and he said he actually stole it from Robb Stark in the Whispering Wood, which was something we saw reference way back to season 1, whenever Robb Stark kidnapped Jaime Lannister.
Right.
So it was a really nice callback. It was a really genius move. I will say it was crazy. As a Game of Thrones fan and a book reader as well, it was crazy to see both Casterly Rock and Highgarden in the same episode, because not only have they never been on the show before, they've never been in the books either. We've never been to those places, so it was really exciting to see, there's what Casterly Rock looks like. We've never seen it. There's Highgarden. And so that was kind of cool to visit those locations. And yeah, no, I completely agree with you, LaRon. I need Jaimie to have wins. I felt like he had a lot of momentum. He had a great season 3. Right. Season 4, he was just there. He was a buddy of Tyrion's. And then season 5, he was out trying to get their daughter back. And then...
Because we formed an allegiance with him at some point, throughout the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that wasn't there before. And now I find myself regressing, So I'm waiting for him to reclaim, why we had that to begin with. But.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It seems like there's one season we love him, and then the next season we're like, why isn't he doing anything?
He's up and down. He's up and down.
Up and down. But yeah, it was. Now this leads us to the concluding scene where he confronts Lady Tyrell, and this was a great scene because again, as we've talked about in previous podcasts, we've been waiting for these moments to where, hey, two characters we like they're gonna be butting heads against each other, and there's gonna be consequences to that. What's that gonna look like? And man, the tension there is just fantastic.
She's a disease. I regret my role in spreading it. You will too.
I think we're done here.
How will it happen?
Cersei had several ideas. Whipping you through the streets and beheading you in front of the Red Keep. Flaying you alive and hanging you from the walls of King's Landing. I talked her out of those.
Will there be pain?
No, I made sure of that.
That's good. I'd hate to die like your son, clawing at my neck, foam and bile spilling from my mouth, eyes blood red, skin purple. Must have been horrible for you, as a king's guard, as a father. It was horrible enough for me. A shocking scene. Not at all what I intended. You see, I'd never seen the poison work before. Tell Cersei. I wanted to know it was me.
I'm so sad to see her go But honestly, I mean, that what a way to go. I mean,
right.
And I mean,
For sure.
it's laid out very strong, and she went out, without any hesitation, without any struggle, and
no regrets.
She still won. In the end, she still won.
Yeah, she gets the last laugh.
She gets the last laugh at the end of that.
It might seem minor in this scene, but I think it will play an important role as we go forward. But she does mention Joffrey's sword is being held currently by Jaimie, Widow's Wail, which is one of the Valyrian swords, which I am certain will play an important role in the kind of battles going forward against the White Walkers. So I think it was important that they pointed that out and the location of it at this time.
No, Austin, I think that's a great point. Nice reminder that Widow's Wail is there, and Jaimie has it. We weren't really sure for a while because he gave away Oathkeeper. He gave that to Brienne, so we weren't sure exactly. We were actually wondering for a good while what happened to Widow's Wail, so it's nice to see that he's picked that back up. And, of course, as you say, it's Valyrian steel. Very important. I really like this scene for a lot of reasons. Again, you have that tension. I really like Elena plays her hands just right. She gets all the information she needs out of him before she's like, okay, and how am I going to go? Once she figures that out, she's okay. Oh, I'm going to die by poisoning. Awesome, even better. She takes the poison, drinks it, and she's like, oh, by the way, now that I know I'm going to die and you can't screw me up, I was the one who killed Joffrey. Make sure to pass the word along to Cersei and let her know it was me. I want her to know it was me. And then she's dead. So she can't get tortured or drugged through the streets or anything crazy like that.
Yeah.
So well played on her part. I mean, I can't imagine any other way for her to go. I was sad to see her go so soon. I knew it was kind of inevitable, but what a way to go. What a way to go.
In a way, I was proud of Jaimie for not just like stabbing her there, for just kind of letting it go and leaving. I think it shows that he's matured quite a bit over the years. One of the other things he's learned, aside from what he learned from Robb.
She was able to win her own death scene, which is very, very, that's her, Lady Tyrell, as we know her. I'm sad to see her go, and hopefully she was able to plant some seeds into Jaimie that, she mentioned that Cersei was a monster, and that, I think the phrase she used was she's a disease. Yeah. And so hopefully she was able to plant some seeds there, and Jaimie is going to be able to do something. But
my hope is that he goes and tells Cersei that, and
is he going to?
That's the big question. I don't know if he will. Yeah. I mean, it depends. I mean,
I think he should. I want him to. I'd be disappointed if he didn't.
I would be interested to see if he withheld that information until a very strategic point. Because that's the thing. Whenever he delivers that information, I feel like that's going to put Cersei off balance and make her vulnerable, because I think she's going to react violently and recklessly like she tends to do when she gets angry.
Right.
And if Jaimie tells her that right away, that still makes her vulnerable. But I wonder if this... Maybe him knowing this information and also, like you say, still kind of planting those seeds of doubt will give him the idea of, well, maybe I should just wait to tell her. Mm-hmm. And then by the time, maybe he'll turn on her later and drop that information like right when it hits her the most.
Because, I mean, either way, it instills something in him, whether he tells her or not. But I think it would be even more effective, obviously letting her know.
Right.
Well, I just want to see her reaction. That's really what it is. But
I mean, if you recall, Cersei tends to act irrationally. I mean, just think of what she did to the nun. I'm never going to forget what she did to the nun. That was pretty maniacal. And the fact that when she wanted to get her way, she blew up an entire set full of people. Like that's... And you could even argue that maybe she even killed all of Robert's bastards. Like that. That argument still exists on the table that maybe she was the one who called that order. So, I mean, this is a woman who's very dangerous, and when she gets... whenever you get a rise out of her, you don't want to mess with her. But at the same time, it makes her reckless and dangerous and more vulnerable than she is normally.
And right now, she needs to be focused and strategic. And
exactly.
And she's not
right
now.
Right. And especially if she gets that information. All right, gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and wrap our show by pre-hashing next week's episode. But first, I do want to remind listeners one last time that you can find us on social media on Facebook.com/Cast Beyond the Wall or on Twitter at Cast_Beyond_GOT. If you want to keep up and conversate with us, talk with us, share your thoughts and opinions, you can hit us up on those means. You can tweet at us or you can post on Facebook. Please do. We'd love to continue that conversation. And thank you so much to all of our listeners, Matthew, Andy, and Jeff, for commenting on this week's episode. Now, gentlemen, where can people find you online if they want to keep up with your work?
I don't do a lot of work, but if you want to tell me how stupid I am about the things I say on this podcast, you can do so on Twitter. My Twitter account is ACLUCARI. You can follow me there and let me know what you disagree with.
All right, Daniel Stoll, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter as well. Daniel Stull, that's DanielStull, the numbers 23. Shoot me a tweet, and I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. And you can also, of course, always find me on Twitter at CMastersTalk. That's letter C, Masters Talk. Tweet at me there. Tweet your opinions. Of course, on Game of Thrones, I also do a lot of movie reviewing. A little more on hiatus, but I'm still tweeting all my movie thoughts. So definitely tweet at me there if you have movie thoughts. And I do video games. You can also find me on Letterboxd and Instagram, CMasters91, or you can find my entire portfolio of work at calebmasters.net. And lastly, I recently launched a website called thecinemetropolis.com, which is your home for thoughtful conversations on film. If you like film essays, if you want to get really in the weeds or really want to analyze specific themes or points of films, we have essays, we have video essays, we've got written essays. We really want to create a great community for people who are into genre and independent film and really want to delve a little deeper than what's on the surface. Again, you can find that at thecinemetropolis.com. LaRon.
Yes, sir.
So, you have this movie, You People. Is there anywhere people can keep up with your film online?
They can. I'm mere months away from a fully polished directorial debut from yours truly.
First film.
First film. It's exciting. I'm excited to show people. But yes, you can follow it on Twitter at youpeoplefilm.com for updates, as well as on Facebook under You People Movie.
Okay, and like if you were going to give the elevator pitch to our listeners about You People.
Oh, man. Play cue music. No, you'll insert that later. That's fine. No, it's a satirical comedy about stereotypes towards different minority groups. Lead character is a black man that's adopted by a white family. He's an alternative black male, very much into rock and country music. His best friend is the opposite of him. He's a white guy that's steeped in hip-hop culture. In order to impress a girl on campus that assumes the main character is a stereotypical black guy, he has to consult in his white friend to help him tap into his inner blackness.
I can't wait to see this movie, by the way. I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of insights to be gained from your film. It sounds like, and I think even Game of Thrones listeners, there's a lot of. There's been some some conversation about race around Game of Thrones from time to time, more about like casting and the way characters are portrayed. But I think if you are a Game of Thrones listener and you like really great, compelling stories, You People is definitely going to be a film you're going to want to check out. So make sure to hit up You People on those social media channels. LaRon, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show this week.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, to close out the show, let's go ahead and prehash next week's episode, tentatively titled The Spoils of War.
My only venture at this moment is re-establishing control over this continent and every person on it.
All my allies are gone. I'm losing.
You can count on the Iron Bank as soon as the gold arrives.
Enough with the clever plans.
I don't know if this title is real because I couldn't find it and it was put on the Chinese HBO website, but they haven't announced the next batch of titles or the synopses, so there's no synopses, and this title is on shaky ground. So instead of talk about the spoils of war, I'm going to pose a question. So as of today, this recording, which is on Monday, July 31st, that's 2 days before this episode is being posted online, there was a hack at HBO where 1.5 terabytes of data was stolen from their servers, I guess. And the hackers in question have full episodes of the next season of Ballers, which is interesting, and also the new show Room 108 or whatever, the Duplass Brothers project. Watch the first episode; it's actually kind of fun. But they also say they have specific plot details of the next episode, season 7, episode 4, and they are threatening and actually promising to release those details online before the episode airs. Now, firstly, you people are monsters. Why would you do this?
Sounds like the Russians to me.
It's always the Russians. First, they hack our
ruin
governments.
everything.
They hack our governments, and now they're hacking our pop culture. Get out of here, Russia. So here's a little experiment for you listeners. I am going to be setting up an online poll on our Facebook and our Twitter, begging the question: if you had access to the full script of Season 7, Episode 4 ahead of time, and you can read it, and it was out in the open, would you spoil yourself? Would you download the illegally stolen script so that you could know what's going to happen? Is it worth it to you? Yes or no or not sure. I'm going to post that on our social media pages. Interact with us. Vote. It's not very hard. You don't even have to comment if you don't want to. I'd love to hear your rationale for doing so. But I'm really curious because one thing I have found as I've been podcasting for a few years, I used to hold by the book of why would you want to spoil anything? Like, that defeats the whole purpose of what you're doing or watching or playing or whatever. Like, it blows my mind.
Right.
But I found that there are a lot of people who actually don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand these people. They are foreign to me. I don't understand why you're engaging with the culture, the pop culture. Why even watch it on TV? Why not just read the Wikipedia summaries? Like, I don't... Right. Which seems blasphemous, because why would you do that? You're missing, like, all that craftsmanship that went into the show and the writing. I don't understand those people, but they do exist, and I know a lot of them, and I'm sure you guys have people like that too. Who said, "Oh, I don't mind if you spoil it. I'm just going to read about it anyway."
Okay,
you're strange, but I would love for you to participate in the poll with a yes, no, or not sure. Those will be the three options on the poll, and I will leave room for you to comment again on the Facebook or the Twitter post. So, would you download the illegally stolen script for an episode of Game of Thrones if it meant you get to know the answers 2 or 3 days ahead of time? Gentlemen, what about you? Austin?
No. If it's just a script, no. If they had the actual episodes, yeah, I might watch them ahead of time, assuming they were of decent quality. But to read the scripts completely ruins the entire experience for me.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on this one. They're called spoilers because they spoil it. Spoiled things are not good things. You don't want to enjoy, you don't eat spoiled fruit or any kind of spoiled food. I don't want to participate in spoiled shows either.
You know, I was cleaning out my kitchen yesterday, and I found a spoiled jar of peanut butter. And I looked inside, and it was green and disgusting. That's because it's spoiled. It went bad. It ruined the peanut butter. We couldn't eat the peanut butter. So why would you want to spoil Game of Thrones, Lauren?
How does peanut butter go bad? That's to last forever. How long has that been in your fridge?
It's a long story. I'm not going to go into it. But yes, there was peanut butter that went bad in my cupboard. Yes, it was in there that long. Lauren, would you spoil Game of Thrones if the option was...
I would not. I think the anticipation kind of plays into all of the excitement in viewing it. So I think that would take it away. And I wouldn't feel like I was, entitled after I had all that information. I feel like I would, it's so much better to watch it as a communal effort,
Well, it's fun because we get to do stuff like this. We get to talk about it. We get to take time to think and chew on it and talk about what we saw and make theories. Like, that's the fun part. So people who could just, like, read the spoilers, I'm like, you're missing out on all that. And you're also missing out on understanding the story and the way that it was designed for you to be experienced. So you're reading, like, it's like reading the Cliff Notes. Yeah. I mean, I know high schoolers do it, but I thought we established that's not good education. Like, it's not good. I don't know. So yeah, listeners, please participate in the poll. Thank you, gentlemen, for your honest, transparent answers here today. Yes, no, and not sure. And I would love it if you would give a rationale, especially if you say, yes, I would do it. I really, really would love to hear what you have to say. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into our discussion of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 3, The Queen's Justice. I can't wait for us to all return again next week with Season 7, Episode 4, when we once again go and bring our analysis beyond the wall.